Hello and welcome to chapter 4, video editing, in our series of how to get started with video marketing. This is number 4 of 5 in our series. And what we'll be talking about today is a bit about editing tools, some of the tools that are out there and the key components that they have. And then we'll talk about the 8 basic steps for editing the video. Then I'll spend a good chunk of the time just demonstrating a really simple video editing process. And then we'll talk about some of the more professional editing cuts that are used in, movies and rich video. And there are probably some learnings that we can take for, our marketing videos. So you can get your planning template that associates this series, and the link is in the notes below. Okay, so as always, guys, jump in, just shout out with your questions as we go, as and when we go. I'm more than delighted for you to do that. I'll also stop at portions of this and we'll check in with everyone. We'll go for about 45 minutes or something like that. So hopefully that's okay with everyone. Move this down here. Okay, so when we talk about video editing tools, it's quite important to understand that there's different types of tools out there. In the main, we've got this one in the middle here, which is video editing software, and there are literally hundreds and many tens of very popular ones out there. So it's impossible really to talk about all of them, but we'll talk about the components that underpin all of them. Beyond traditional video editing software, there's some other related software components that's worth understanding about. There's conversion tools. So these are tools that can convert between different types of media formats and different types of audio formats. And, very often we will need a conversion tool to sort of underpin our broader editing activities. If we're doing anything to do with knowledge sharing, tutorials like this, having some video screen capture software, is probably going to be part of our tool makeup. But in the main for today, we're going to talk about just traditional editing software, video editing software. And I think that the thing to do if we're a beginner with video marketing and producing and editing video, it's definitely a good idea to start simple. So these screenshots are from the iMovie software, which is free on any Apple device, and there are equivalent free tools on Android devices and Windows laptops, Windows machines, and so there's always a free video editing tool out there that's going to be very good for our needs, and it's probably already sitting on our device, whether it's our mobile device or whether it's our laptop or desktop device. And I think definitely if we're new to editing video, then starting with the simple software is an extremely good idea. And the reason for that is, just very broadly speaking, it doesn't really matter about whether you're talking about iMovie, which is a free software tool that ships with any Apple device, right up to Adobe Premiere Pro, which is pretty much the most professional video editing software you can buy commercially and is used to create sort of Hollywood movies and things like that. They all share the same basic features. So there's nothing, there are loads of additional features you will find in Adobe Premiere Pro, but all of the basics, the basic look and feel and structure of the system, will be remarkably similar. And so, these 3 screenshots here of 3 different systems, you've always got the workspace, and that's the piece of video that you're currently editing and what it will look like at that point in time. That would normally be shown on the main workspace. And then crucially, at the bottom of the screen, you'll always have these video and audio track editing, editing component. And this is in effect a timeline that represents from the start of the video moving towards the end of the video. And you would have, depending on the software capability, you can have a number of video tracks that potentially overlap, and certainly one come after another, and a number of audio tracks. And it's how we manipulate these individual tracks and how we edit them, and the styles and the graphics and the overlays and the speed ups and the slowdowns we apply to these individual tracks, and then we pull the tracks together to weave a start to finish video that we can then export from these video systems. And so the other component will be, somewhere you'll have all of the source media files, so the raw media files and images and audio files that we're pulling into our project. Yeah. So those are the basic features. Before we do a demonstration, let's talk about, on a really basic level, what are the key steps for editing? So first of all, at the very outset, we need to take the source files that we've captured from our video device and the associated audio files and just get them onto one location that's probably going to be our laptop early on. Now, we can edit on mobile devices, but we'll sort of focus on how it works for desktop device. And because you're probably going to be dealing with a number of audio files and a number of audio and video files associated, and possibly they're separate, we're probably going to be dealing with a number of source files. And what's really important is that we set up a folder structure that's representative of our series and the individual episodes that are made up within those. Because what once we're up and running on our series and we're creating a number of episodes, then it's very easy to get very quickly disorganized if we don't have a neat file structure that sets things up from the outset. So it's a kind of, it's a simple step, but it's a really, really important one, particularly once you get into this. You'll find it's a very valuable tip. And then step two, we've been talking about, a number of us have captured a number of different files, and we've got different versions of everything. We've got a number of different takes of different scenes that are making up our episode. It's worthwhile organizing all of your footage in one place and then just watching all of it, because once you do that, you can pick out the takes that you think are best from a video and or audio perspective and start to line them up in your own mind before you actually get into your editing system. Now, the next step is we're opening up our editing software, and we'll demonstrate that in a moment. But step three is what sometimes people will call an assembly edit. So this is taking all of our best shots and putting them in the right order, or if we've run everything in one take, possibly, it's putting the whole thing, in our video editing and then chopping it at the right points, at broadly the right points. So this is called an assembly edit, and we can organize the best shots in our story in the right order. Once we've run that assembly edit, we can then go and fine tune. And especially when we're talking about video for marketing, pulling out all of the pauses, all of the unnecessary, lags, anything that sounds remotely like waffle. We just want to cut all of this stuff out as much as possible. And the truth is, in my opinion, I don't take the fine cutting as far as it should be taken. I think you can always cut further. And in general, with marketing, with video for marketing, the quicker and the tighter we can get our video, the better. So that's fine cutting. And then step 6, depending on how feature rich you want your video to be, you can have B-roll, which might be some video footage of the kind of the background, or video footage of an associated product, or video footage of an associated person. We might have images that are going to support our video that we can interweave into our final cut via editing. And then of course, text overlays. If we want to overlay some text, introducing elements of our video, then, you know, then we can add that through this sort of third step edit. You know, then there's step 7, which is the sound check. The key rule of thumb here is just that make sure that at every point of the video you can be properly, or the characters in the video can be heard, you know, correctly, and the user doesn't have to the viewer doesn't have to struggle. You know, it's reasonably widely understood that viewers of video will be more forgiving of bad light than they will be, you know, of poor sound.
Is that true? That's really interesting. I must admit, my own watching of car vloggers, it's amazing how many times you lose the sound. It's not every video, but there's quite a few of them that actually do lose, or sound really drops quite a lot. So, and they just carry on, so they clearly one take.
Yeah, I think it's it's a bit context specific. I suppose if you're watching videos about cars, you could argue that the car is a more important character than the person. So it's definitely context specific. But in a lot of marketing videos, we're trying to convey information, and we just want to be tight and consistent and flowing with that information. You know, and sound can interfere with that. But look, it's case by case. You wouldn't chop a really great bit of video just because it had some poor sound. You might be able to take out the soundtrack and overlay some alternative sound. Yeah, or you might live with it. It's case by case.
Thanks.
You know, and then the final step is just a final review, and then you're ready to go. Let's go in now to a demonstration. So in order to try and make this a bit more effective, I videoed myself editing a piece of video earlier on today, and I'm going to play the video, but I'm going to talk over the video as opposed to let the video audio play. To make this clean, I've pre-recorded it. So I'll talk you through what I'm doing. So what I'm doing here is I'm capturing the source image, the source video file. And in this case, it's one video that I recorded on my iPhone. And it's one long video that I'm going to chop up via an assembly edit and then via a fine cutting edit in order to make a tighter, shorter 15-second video for the purposes of this example, for an Instagram story or a Facebook story. So the actual footage itself is, you know, as you saw a clip of there, it's just me riding through the forest on my bike with my dog, and it's about a minute long. But we're going to use this editing software now to get it down to 15 seconds, so it will work as an Instagram story. So I've set up a folder, a top level folder here that says screen share tutorials, because ultimately this, although the video I'm editing is going to be an Instagram story for my Instagram post, the actual video that we're creating here is a screen share tutorial that I'm now using to demonstrate video editing, if that makes sense. So it's 2 for the price of 1 here. We can also get a view for how you can use screen sharing to create a tutorial, as well as how we can edit a 1-minute video down into 15 seconds. So I've created the series folder, and underneath that I've created the episode folder. I've dragged the source file into that folder. And so the next thing I need to do is go into my video editing application and bring down that source video, which is in my screen share tutorials here. And that's where the source file is. And I'm bringing that source file into the project, which means it becomes available to the workspace of this editing software. And remember, pretty much every single editing software has this core feature. These are the core features I'm demoing here. The important thing to understand is, so now what's happening in the video is we're saving a project space. So in the same folder, it doesn't have to be, but for me, I like to create in the same folder a project space, so a video editing project that has the same name as the episode. basically, except this is not a video file. This is a project setting file. And what we're doing when we pull down this source video and add it to the workspace, which is what you're going to see in a moment on the screen, what's happening here is that source video is being associated with the project settings. And what's really important to remember here is that we are not copying this video we're not duplicating this video. The source file has to remain in the same place. If we delete the source file, this project setting area will not have retained a copy of that video. And most software systems, it will be the same. So we're adding this video to the workspace, but we're not duplicating it, if that makes sense. Okay, and so once we've added a video, and obviously, hopefully we've understood we can add any number of videos and line them up against each other if we've got many video sources. If we've got one long take, which is the scenario that Mike was talking about, and we're chopping it up, that's typically the most the simplest form of edit. This is what we're going to show here, but the process is exactly the same as as you're going to see as we go through this. And again, to clarify, you can add images, audio files by themselves. The top level here, this is the video track, and the bottom level is the audio track. They can be separated. The first job then is to find the start point of the video. So where do we want the video to actually start? And then we cut from that point. So in this case, there's a bit of time of me taking off with my bike, and I've decided I want this point into the video to be my start point. So you place your cursor in the appropriate area, you cut, and at that point it creates two separate tracks out of the one. In this case, the only reason we did that is because we just want to remove this superfluous stuff at the start, and so that's gone now. And then the next job is to find our intro sequence. So in this really simplistic video, I'm going to have an intro sequence, I've got a middle sequence, and then I've got an end sequence. So I just want to find the end of my intro. And the end of my intro is really just a few seconds, in this case 5 seconds, of me cycling down the track and my dog running along in front of me. So I move the video to the appropriate point where I want to end the intro, and again I put a cut in there. In order to demonstrate the fact that sound and video are separate tracks, what we'll do with this particular video is replace the sound, which is actually just me heavy breathing because I'm driving along on my mountain bike, and some nice birds in the background, but it's not really audio that we can rework to be particularly useful, because the audio is all mixed up. There's not two separate audio tracks. So in this case, we're going to use some of the music that's the license-free music that's built into this platform, and we're going to pick some adventurous discovery type theme tune, and we're going to load it into this video project to in effect replace the audio that was attached to the video and replace it with this music track. Now, I think in the last course we spoke about the locations where we can get access to royalty-free music, license-free music, and sound effects and all sorts. And so you've got a great deal of opportunity to pull down any sorts of music or audio sources there.
Elliott, this new clip that you brought in, does it replace the sound effects which are already in your video, or does it kind of mix up?
Well, that's a really good question. So if you leave them as both audible, so you can make something non-audible, or you can leave them in place. If we left them both in place at this point, they would mix up. Okay. And that's obviously, in this case, that's not what we want. So in a moment in this video, I'm going to delete this audio track. But if you want to run them together, if you want to mix sounds, you absolutely can do that. And video editing, where you go beyond 101, sound mixing is a really sort of cool thing to do. And you can play with, you can split these audio tracks and and make, you know, one higher at one point and one lower at another point, and vice versa. Yeah. You can also cut gaps in these things and mix it in that way. So with something like iMovie, I think you've only got one audio track to play with, so you don't get that option in the really basic editing softwares. But in this one, which is like a little bit above basic, I think you've got 2, possibly 3 audio tracks. The way it works with video, it's exactly the same. So if you want to overlay video, you can do that, but you need to decide how you want it to arrange on the screen. So you can have it, you know, you can have one overlaying another, or you can have, you know, top bottom. I think on this software you can have up to 4, so you can have a split screen of 4. But then you've got, you know, while we're on this topic, you've also got text overlays. So that's an overlay track that doesn't draw down on one of your video tracks. So we're sort of getting a little bit advanced here, but I suppose you've got, with the software like this particular software, you've got up to 4 video tracks, up to 2 or 3 audio tracks, and then a text and or image overlay track on top of that. So you can overlay a lot of stuff. But in this sort of simplistic edit, what we've done here is we've created an intro section. Now the middle section was as we approach, you know, the bridge where we're going to get a train going underneath it. Because I wanted the middle section also to be over only 5 seconds, there was a 10-second run up to it, but we went in and we set the speed of this video to be at 200%. So this video is playing twice as fast as, you know, as the natural speed, which renders it at 5 seconds. As we get on to the bridge, I want to capture the point at which, you know, I look right, and the point at which the viewer can see the train approaching from the right. You probably sort of missed it earlier on, but because you know, I'm a rookie production camera person, when I turned to the right, and I didn't actually create this video specifically for this purpose, but when I turned to the right, I zoomed in to the train that was coming towards us. So you get this turn to the right, and then you get this jump forward, which kind of looks bad for a video. So that's the component there that I'm just setting about removing. And what we're looking to do here is add what's called a transition. So you don't have to have a transition when you move from one scene to another, but all of the editing tools will give you, you know, basic transitions. And as you can see in the top right here, this is a ripple transition. So that as we go from that particular scene to the jump towards the jump towards the train coming in, we're going to have a ripple transition. And transitions in their most simplest form are used to represent either a change in, you know, theme of the video, or potentially a change in time passing. So we're out in the middle of the nice countryside, and then suddenly there's a train coming at you, and that was the idea, at least for this example. Okay, so what we're doing in this last portion of the video, which we can speed up a bit, is just looking to smooth out this movement that goes from right to left, because, you know, and as we'll see in the sort of the professional advice that comes from the professional edit cuts, we want to bring the viewer with us. So it's important that the viewer feels when they're watching the movement is consistent, and they're not looking at a train in one direction, then suddenly looking at it in another direction. It would feel incorrect. So we have to allow this movement that comes across, so that the viewer can stay with us towards the back end of the video. So this last component is just smoothing out that transition. And then right at the end, we end up with a 15-second video. And what we're seeing in the top right here is what it looks like. Oh, sorry, it was 16 seconds. So I've cut a second off at the start. so that we can get within Instagram rules. And once that second goes, then we can see it's at the total video is now at 15 seconds, down from 1 minute. I've obviously got to bring the audio along to meet the back end of this video, so that the whole, once we do export in a moment, so that the whole video is a 15-second video and not 15 seconds of video with another minute of sound. And then it's my lovely dog, little baby, running in front of me. And then we speed up as we get to the bridge. We've got the transition, a train comes, and then the train is going away. Okay, look, it's not the best example of video marketing, but hopefully it's a good example of how you can get from a minute's footage down to 15 seconds, which is obviously a bit tighter and, you know, hopefully a bit more interesting. Yeah, and then the final step is obviously you save the project. So just to recap, what we're doing here is saving the project settings, and those settings are telling the editing software how to cut up that source video. So still at this stage, we cannot lose that source video. Otherwise, the work that we've done here sort of comes to nothing. When you export, that's when we're creating a video copy based on this edited setup. And we can choose our quality. The higher the quality of the video, the more, you know, the more space it will take up, but obviously it will render great. The typical format is MP4. If you're going to upload to YouTube, to LinkedIn, to Twitter, whatever it is, MP4 is your go-to format. There are other versions, but MP4, you know, is probably the best standard. What I would say is, if you're uploading to Twitter, they actually have a max file size of about 220 meg. So if you're choosing the highest quality, and you can see that it's going to produce a 1 gig file, then, you know, you're kind of wasting your time anyway. If you're going to upload to YouTube, it's definitely worth, you know, creating it in HD in a high quality format. You know, LinkedIn, you know, in general, the social media channels will be a bit more forgiving because it's a much smaller screen. You don't necessarily need the tighter resolution, but whichever one you choose it, you export it. And once you've done that, it's going to create a new MP4 file in your project directory. Yeah, you know, and that's it. You are complete. So that's the end of that demo. Are there any questions on any of that?
Elliott, did you say that you would save to MP4 pretty much for anything?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you use an Apple device, it's going to produce .mov files. So I'm just struggling to get out of my screen here. It's going to. So I'm being fooled by my video is showing me what I'm a fake desktop. Yeah. So it's yeah, MP4 is the standard. If you're producing videos on an iPhone, it will create it in a .mov file format. But you can drop an MOV into a video editing software and then output as MP4. If that makes sense. The same with, you know, a .avi, whatever video format you've captured it in, that doesn't really matter. Your editing software will bring it out as MP4.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Subtitles.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's a really good question. So you can add subtitle files to the video editors. Let me just show you sort of broadly how to do that. Did I speak about subtitles in the first episode or the second episode of this? Just want to make sure I don't repeat myself. No.
I think it might have been second. Can't remember.
Yeah, subtitles are actually crucial. Really, I think it's a really good point that you just brought up there. They're absolutely crucial. They really are, because when people are watching video on social media, is very, very often they will not be watching them. They will not be watching them with the sound on. This is an example of a video conversion software. It's another form of video editor, except its speciality, is conversions. So you can go back through your file system and you can find the file that you want to work with. I'm going to use a LinkedIn example. Let's just use this example. So if I open this MP4 up here, I can do a few different things. But one of the things I can do is see, there's no. So this video, and we'll talk about, we will talk about this more on Thursday. This video is set up as Square for social media. So this video, when I exported this video from the editing software, I exported it as a Square format. So when you export the video, in fact, when you set up the video project in the first place, you can set up the video, the screen size. So you can set up 1:1, which is square, or the traditional landscape, which is the example I just showed you. But if you've got landscape video that you want to edit in Square, all that will happen is it will show the two ends of the landscape video that are going to be cut off. So you can move the frame across so that you can position your Square accordingly. That's part of the editing feature. When I, for context, when I'm doing these LinkedIn videos, I'm always squaring, because it's a vlog, it's easy for myself. I'm always going to be in the middle. So I don't have to do any fiddling around with the edges. I just let the edges go when I format them for Square. But then when I export them with this, specifically with this top and bottom on. So in actual fact, sorry, I'm just going to disagree with what I've just said. What actually happens with my LinkedIn videos is that that's a landscape format with an additional bit on the top and an additional bit on the bottom. I use the additional bit on the top for the titles of the video and the context of the video, which might change 2 or 3 times over the course of a 2-minute video. And this is where I want my subtitles to be. So when I go in here, I can go to subtitle section, and you can do this from within a converter, which is I'm showing you here, but it's always going to be an option in certainly most video editors. I'm not 100% sure about iMovie. And then you have to add, you have to find what's called an SRT file, which is what I was just looking for. Now, let's just, for argument's sake, these are SRT files that are just knocking around on my computer. They're not going to be relevant for this particular video. But if I open that SRT file and then start to play, what you'll see is this is now appearing because I've added that SRT file to this video editor. Now, the thing about an SRT file, let's just go and open one up. SRT or subtitle file of any type. I've got so much rubbish on my computer. Let's clean it up. Where is it? Oh, here we go. Okay, so if we open this up with a text editor, what you'll see is it's just a series of timestamps. That's the time of the video with the sentence that you want to appear. So they're really basic files, and you can create your own. But it is a bit time consuming. So that the hack that I use is I upload videos to YouTube. Now remember, for those LinkedIn videos, the primary platform is not YouTube. It's LinkedIn and to some extent Twitter. But I do upload them to YouTube just so that I can get a shortcut to the subtitles file, because YouTube will automatically create subtitles and it will sort of automatically transcribe a video. So if we go and look at this particular one here, you can go into the edit section of YouTube. We're crossing over a little bit from some of the stuff I'll go over next week, but don't worry about that for now. Oh, sorry, it's in the more options section. So these subtitles were initially created by YouTube, automatically created by YouTube, or could create them within about 20 minutes of you uploading a video. It creates an SRT file. If you open the SRT file, it looks like the text edit that we've just seen. Any like inconsistencies that you see, you can just go in and quickly create them, quickly correct them, and then file save this. Now, once you do that, you've got an SRT file that you can then take to your editor, and then I can burn in those subtitles using that initially YouTube created subtitle file that I've then corrected. I can burn them in. So that's a process that will take me, it's part of my launch process that I'll cover in more detail next week. But I will upload it to YouTube. While I'm doing that, I'll be reformatting the video, doing a few other things. 20 minutes later, the YouTube file is ready. I can spend 10 minutes correcting it, and then I upload it into this subtitles file. And once I've done that, then I can apply the changes. I can convert this file, and this will create a copy of this video, except in this case, it will have the subtitles burned into it. And then once you've got that, you can then upload that to Twitter, or LinkedIn, and it's going to have the subtitles baked in. So sorry for that long-winded answer, but it's a really good question, Mike, because it's really important.
That's really helpful, especially the hack with YouTube. I was dreading that until you mentioned there's a hack. Thank you.
So that you use the hack correctly, sometimes you might have to convert SRT to SBV. Is that the one? So there, if your editing software, as it might do, if your editing software says, or if LinkedIn, if you want to add the subtitle file directly onto the LinkedIn video, which is the other way of doing it, LinkedIn won't accept an SRT. LinkedIn wants an SBV file. So sometimes I use this. If you literally type in SRT to SBV into Google, you'll get this captionsconverter.com come up. It's a free tool. You upload your SRT file, and then it converts it into a SBV file. I was doing that at one stage, but in all honesty, I found that actually controlling the subtitles from within my own edit, I just prefer doing that now. So I don't use that step anymore. But the YouTube hack's a really good one. So then the other video I'll just sort of quickly show you is that the video editor tool that I've just shown you there, which is actually a converter, really. The other way to use that is if you're doing a sort of a how-to tutorial video like this, but also like the example, video editing example with my dog that I just showed you. I used, because the screen recording software that I had was a bit fiddly in conjunction with me also trying to do editing, and running screen recording and running an editor is memory intensive. So my computer kept crashing. So it took me about, I don't know, 8 or 9 different mini screen recording shots, not all repeating the same thing, but moving through the process. So I used the conversion software to take all of those versions. As you can see, it's actually more than 8 or 9. I uploaded them all into the converter. And then I used this merge option. So you can merge them into one, that I then took back in to the converter, because I find that the converter is very good for just doing simple cropping, trimming. So the sort of assembly edit that we just spoke about in the video editor, and Mike sort of spoke about, going along, finding the things that are a bit silly, chopping them out, adding them in, adding them in, chopping them out in this case, and bringing down, I don't know, a 28-minute video down to a sort of a 15-minute video. This is a process that I find myself doing a lot for sort of how-to tutorial videos that I do for things like this, but also I do, a large part of my work, especially at the moment, is about putting together presentations and how-to videos like this. So that's another way of using that type of software. Okay. Right, so, Ali, have you got any thoughts, any comments, any questions?
No, I think you lost me with the subtitle stuff, but we haven't really thought about subtitles, have we? So we might think about doing that, but that's a new element.
Yeah, I will. Subtitles was going to come in on the next episode on number 4, because the thing about subtitles, it's more than a nice to have when it comes to video marketing, particularly if you're going to use LinkedIn, Ali. So we'll cover it again, and I'll do it in a bit more step by step, because I rushed it a bit. So sorry.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, everything else makes really good sense. It's really good to see you doing it, showing us what it looks like.
Yeah, I was going to put in a load of screenshots, but I thought that might be a bit more useful. So yeah, good. But look, the best thing is just pick the most simplest tool you like and just use it. And in terms of like what tool to use, honestly, there are so many out there, and they're all really good, and they all do similar things. So just have a look at them and just go with the one that you feel is best.
Okay, thanks.
Maha?
No, actually, this just kind of brought me back to our classes, because usually whenever I've studied digital marketing or video or whatever, it's always very, very theoretical. And even though you understand the concept behind it, I've never actually understood how to do it. But one thing I really liked about Elliott's classes as well is that he literally used to show us everything on screen, just the SEO, how to make videos, anything and everything. It was like a practical demonstration, and that kind of helps you really retain the information. So this is a great example of you doing it again. So thank you. It's actually really helpful.
Oh, well, thank you, Maha. That's really nice to hear. Thank you. And Mike, any questions or thoughts?
No, not at the moment. Thanks, Elliott. That's great.
All right, good. So we're at 5:10. So I'll run through the last elements of the presentation, but as always, just shout if there are any questions. Okay, so that was the demo. And look, I touched on it at the start, but collating your raw footage, trust me, this I learned the hard way. This is a really important one. So just do yourself a favor, create a top level folder on your computer somewhere called video, and then for each of your series, create a separate holding folder, and then literally a separate folder for each episode, and just underneath your episodes, do it how you want. But if you do it this way, you won't lose subtitle files, you won't lose raw footage, you won't lose obviously your final cut. And one of the things we're going to talk about next week is repurposing the content, reusing the content for different channels, but also potentially for the same channel in a different way. So you might find yourself, and I can see myself potentially wanting to do this, almost making a video about how I made a video series, for example, in which case you would want to drop in shots of those different episodes. And so if you've got it organized on your own computer, it just makes it so much more easy to do that. Just common mistakes I thought I'll sort of point out, because, and again, I'm speaking as a kind of someone who's you know, I know a bit, and I've been, you know, doing this for a couple of years, but I'm still learning, you know, every day. And, you know, thanks to you guys holding me to account to do these things, I've been learning a lot more. And so these are some of the common mistakes, and I've definitely made these. So one thing is screen direction. So what this is saying is, and this is coming from professional editors, you need to keep the flow of literally the direction in which characters are moving. So the simplistic example, you can't have a shot of a character moving from left to right and then another shot because you've taken it from the other side of the character moving from right to left. Even though from the character's perspective, they're just moving in one direction, the viewer will feel like it's disconnected. And apparently, you know, that's a big one, and it's one to look out for if you've got, you know, a more complex setup. You know, timing, and what this is talking about is like pace of the audio in line with pace of the video. So if we've got some voiceover running, then, you know, that's quite important. And if we're using music, then it's really, really important. The really big one and the main one, and we sort of touched on it today, is just all of the pauses and all of the lags. You know, either cut them out, or speed them up. It will look and feel, you know, much more engaging. And as we saw with Mike at the start, he had a 6-minute video down to 2 minutes. You know, we saw that 1-minute video is down to 15 seconds, and it creates a better experience. The continuity thing, so this is continuity of the storyline. And if we plan correctly, we should find that the video that we're using when we come to edit, you know, will make it easy for us to create a feeling of continuity for our viewers. Now I want to talk about, you know, and this comes from research over the last few days. So these are the cuts for creating, like, and these are from professionals. So these are professional ideas around how to transition from one scene to another in order to create, you know, a stronger emotional or in general engagement with our viewer. And we'll talk about some of these main cuts, 9 of them there are, and how to use them. So first of all, to clarify, a cut is a transition from, you know, one scene to another. And before we go on here, it's important to make you know, to point out there's a difference between a transition, which is a ripple out, fade in, fade out, which is a kind of a cut from one scene to another, to the more strategic cuts, which is what we're going to be talking about here. I'll talk about them, and then I think it will make more sense. So first of all, a standard cut is what we've seen so far. We've got one point of the clip, we've cut out some component we don't need, and we just simply append the second scene onto the first scene. So it will just move across seamlessly. Similarly, if we've got 2 different sets of video footage and we just stick them together, that would be a standard cut. And we can use a standard cut if one scene flows seamlessly into the another, and we don't need to create any form of theatrical, you know, we don't need to do any form of signaling to the viewer that there's something more going on than just simply moving from one scene to another. If we do want to signal to the viewer that there's something else going on, then these are the sorts of cuts we can use. And the first one is called a jump cut. And so this is a cut that that represents a period of time moving across. So we can quite simply jump from you know, Mike walking towards his sports car to Mike driving down the motorway on his sports car. That's a cut that clearly signifies there's some period of time that's lapsed between those two scenes. And then there's something called a J cut. So this is one that, you know, you'll probably, now I'll tell you about it, you'll probably notice it all the time. I certainly have. It's when the audio soundtrack from the scene that's coming next is pulled forward and plays over the video soundtrack of the previous scene. So if you've got you know, the sound of a train, you know, pulling out of a station, and you've got some audio of, you know, a gentleman remembering when he was, you know, leaving going off to join his troops into battle or something like that. You might have the gentleman talking to the screen, and the sound of that train pulling out of the station overlays his video track before you cut to the actual train. It allows the viewer to know where they're going. And then the L cut, it's essentially the opposite. It's the opposite of the J cut. You'll see the L cuts in things like, if you watch, BBC Newsnight, which I've sort of can't handle watching anymore, so I just haven't watched it for ages. But any sort of like news interviewing type program, when two people are interviewing, each other, you'll quite often see the questioner, that you'll hear rather the questioner's voice and the questioner's question when you're looking at the interviewee's face. So this might be one possibly for Ali and Jordan to consider, depending on the format that you're looking at. But that's an L cut. And then there's cutting, there's the action cut. So the idea here is that you've got, a scene that, there's not much going on. It's not an action scene. You've got any other kind of scene, and then you cut into action. This could definitely work for, car videos. There's lots of opportunities to do that here. But an action cut will kind of like grab the user, or grip the user. It will engage them and bring them into what we're doing. It's an action cut. Other types of cuts are, cross-cutting. This is the one where you've got, the bad guy running away from the cop, and they're coming together at some point. These two are going to meet, but we're seeing a scene from the perspective of the police officer, and we're seeing a scene from the perspective of the criminal, and those scenes are cutting between each other. So we've got this sort of element of suspense and parallel scenes sort of coming into play, and that's cross-cutting. So castaways, this is like if you're running an interview and they're talking about the beautiful countryside or something like that, you'll have a scene of the two people in the interview, and then you'll cast away towards beautiful shots of the countryside, or maybe some sort of wildlife, looking really cute or something like that. So those are castaway shots that can build the picture, so it allows the viewer to engage in the wider, environment. And then you've got these montage scenes, which are sort of classic for sort of, Rocky movies. For anyone who can't remember, movies about a boxing champion who's got the fight of his life. In the middle of a movie like that, you'll have a montage of scenes where he's doing his training, waking up early, drinking raw eggs, and doing all of that kind of stuff, running upstairs, and generally getting in shape. So a montage will show a sequence of scenes that represents the development or evolution or growth of a character, but it can also be used in other ways. And then, the match cuts an interesting one when I learned about this the other day. So this is like, this is when you've got two matching themes of a scene, but they're in a completely different context. So a good example is if you're a travel company and you're looking to sell a travel experience, you might have a couple, a spouse, two spouses, and they might be jumping together, onto their bed. They might be talking about their dream holiday, and they jump together onto their bed, and they're looking at some holiday magazines. And as they're jumping onto the bed, we suddenly cut to a scene of them jumping into some beautiful turquoise water in some beautiful, beach somewhere. So you've got this continuation of they're both jumping, but we take the viewer from, one scene, in rainy UK to another scene in wonderful holiday destination, wherever. Okay, so that's it for today. Let's just recap what we learned. So we spoke about some of the editing tools. The key thing here is, start simple, and once you've got the hang of editing, then look to potentially invest in some more sophisticated tools. There's 8 steps for editing. We in many cases we'll be following all of them, and these are the key steps. We spoke about demo, and obviously I'll make that video independently available if anyone wants it, but really the best thing is to get in and try this stuff yourself. And then we spoke about the 9 cuts for video content. So thank you very much for listening. I thought your video was brilliant. I only just watched it 10 minutes ago, but I think Sam said in the comment that it was your passion really came across, and I thought exactly the same, and it shows you how important that is. It was really good.
I did it down to a 2-second clip in the end, which just caught the essence of it, but I won't bore you with that. But
I like the idea of taking the carpets up. That was quite unusual, that you like to expose your aluminium without carpets.
Yeah. No, it's because it's a very lightweight car. Unlike me, it's very, very lightweight, and the carpets add nothing to it apart from something to clean. You got the aluminium, which obviously doesn't rust, so you just need to hoover that out, and it just cleans really easily. So, and actually, you can get them without the carpets. It sounds really bizarre, but it's just a small thing. They weigh a couple of kilos. So you'll be amazed at what people do to make these cars light. I mean, some of the cars now, the new cars, actually barely have enough body covering for the top of the car. They literally make them lighter by just stripping out panels from the sides. So I'll let you know if we ever go down to. Sorry, Jordan. Sorry.
Marginal gains.
It is everywhere. Yeah. So. I'll certainly let you know if we ever go down to Rikers again, which I think we'll probably do in the next couple of weeks. I'll let you know, and if you fancy an early morning run,
that's when we might get in his car then.
Yeah. Oh no, you're getting some far more interesting cars than mine.
So was that that video that you posted then? Did you say you edited it down to 2 minutes?
I did, yeah. So I think it's about 5 minutes of content. Maybe 4 minutes. And then basically I took your advice and just left the 5-second gap. So if I made a mistake or actually as I sort of pause, there's a pause for 5 or 10 seconds. There's a couple of areas where, I didn't quite do that properly, but that just made it so much easier. I just on my iPhone, just with iMovie, just to, split the video, detach it, find, the next point, split that, delete that 5-second gap, and it just really, really helped. I mean, I think my first edit was down to about 3 minutes 15, and now I tried to upload it to LinkedIn, and LinkedIn said, sorry, 2 minutes is the maximum. So then I chopped another 1 minute 15 out of it by just simply going back for it again. But yeah, your technique of just leaving a pause, and if it doesn't go, if you screw it up, just repeat it again on the same length of video effectively, just made it so much more easy to edit on something as simple as iMovies, because obviously you'd have to then drag, drop new files and go elsewhere. So that really made a big difference.
It's good. I mean, it's really, really nice to see, because the whole video flowed quite smoothly, and it wasn't, it didn't look like you've overly edited it. In a way, I hoped you had, actually, because for the purposes of this course, and in particular today, it really it demonstrates the point really well of this kind of assembly edit approach, which is what you've ran there. Yeah, so that was really good.
And I just used a bullet point approach as well, and that to be blunt, I did a few earlier takes of just with the bullet points, and it wasn't so much about making a video, the concept of making a video. It's just more about the tying up the logistics. I tried to have 2 cars in it in the first video, and the logistics of trying to talk, open up a car, get in a car, move to the other car, just added so much time, and to make it meaningful. So I thought, just keep it to 1 car inside, do a bit of external, walk up, and it made it so much easier. Yeah. So logistics was a really big thing of just kind of getting out. So yeah.
Have you watched Car Wow, Mike?
Yeah.
I thought it was a similar, not the same, except it's the sort of thing he does. He touches his aluminium and goes, "Oh, what's one of my like that?"
Yeah. No.
The dashboard's a bit plasticky and. Not suggesting yours is.
No. It's very actually it's deliberately, and I like it being plasticky for various reasons, but it's one of those. I mean, I do look at a lot of the vlogs, and obviously my video will be two camera, stationary, noise sharing. So there's a little bit of noise sharing around that, but I thought do it to camera from actual video. I did try a few times to camera, Elliott, but I wasn't. I was just a bit time constrained really to be able to do that properly. But I did enjoy doing it.
We had the funniest time doing stuff to camera the other day.
Oh, really?
I laughed so much for ages.
So how did it go, Ali? Tell us. Did you produce something?
We've taken lots of clips. We haven't put anything together yet. But it took a while to work out how to get you looking like you're just speaking naturally.
Yes, I tended to stick with my script. I feel like I need my security of knowing what I'm going to say, but that's to the detriment of how I come across. So we tried all sorts of different techniques of just having, like you suggested, the bullet points, and for me to pretend I'm talking to someone that I know and I'm just talking casually in a conversation rather than looking at a script. So we tried all sorts of things. It was really funny, but we've got stuff to edit. We've definitely got enough material, haven't we, for the first episode?
Yes, and on production, it really is like the more you do it, the more natural it will sort of come across. And obviously, you know anyway, but the more you can feel comfortable behind on camera and be yourself, in most cases that's going to work best. Remember, we don't have to be actors and actresses. In most cases with marketing videos, we're playing ourselves. So we just got to be ourselves, because we're going to talk about editing today, but the truth is editing can be made very easy or very difficult depending on how we produce the footage. But look, this is all about learning. So I suppose when you said you've got a lot of footage, it makes me think that you've got like tens or hundreds of little clips that you need to pull together, which might be challenging, but you're going to learn something when you try to do it.
Yeah.
It's more like we've got about 5 versions of me saying the same thing, and which is the best one. More that than masses of stuff to fit in. I think we're going to be all right.
But it's great that you've dived in there. It's great you've got some footage. So so of what you've taken at the moment, what do you think you're going to be editing it down to? What's the final target?
I think
it's about 1.5 minutes, isn't it?
Yes, in the end it was.
For the first episode, the sort of intro to the series, it's going to be 1.5 minutes.
Good. And
we
Mike,
cut it down a lot from what it was. We thought it was too long-winded initially, so we cut a load of stuff out of it, so we've got the essence of it.
Okay, so you've produced the footage, but you already have an idea about what it's going to look like at the end.
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Yeah. Really
good. Because you did the plan.
Because we did the plan.
Excellent. Okay, really good. All right. So we've heard from Mike, and we just heard there from Ali. Anything else that you want to share about your experience of producing Ali and Jordan?
We found out that quite a good way of getting to speak naturally on camera was for me to read out a line that she wanted to say, and then you just repeated it, and that came out quite well.
Yes, that was quite good. It made me look at the camera properly rather than half looking at my lines. But I did struggle with remembering the whole sentence. So that was very funny. But we tried lots of different ways of doing that, didn't we? And we tried one thing of a different camera angle as well. You set up.
Yeah, so when there might be a mistake on the sort of front angle of the camera, you can cut away to a slightly different angle. So it doesn't look like if you skip 5 seconds of the front on camera, you don't like jump at all, if you get me. But if you've got a slightly different angle, then it looks more natural, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some good techniques that you're experimenting with there, and I think in my experience with video editing, there's video production. There's not necessarily any rules. You just got to find your own way that works. Definitely the one that you said right at the start, Ali, about just imagine you're speaking to a person as opposed to speaking to camera. I think that's, for most people, that's definitely a good idea. Forget the cameras there.
Yeah, that definitely worked, and it made it better.
Yeah, cool. And Mike, from your experience, anything else you would like to add?
No, I think really for me it's what apart from the mechanics of making it, shooting, etc. I think the one thing for me that really stuck out is what I think is interesting in my head when I start to talk about it, from a bullet pointed script, becomes it sometimes just doesn't work. So actually, I use the camera technique instead of talking to a mirror, because I was trying to learn how to video and also to edit. I thought I'd just do that instead of replacing the mirror. I do the camera, do it straight to camera, and then through that process, I learn pretty quickly. So I think that thinking about it and practicing it before I do the video and going forward is going to be important to me, because I don't know why. I mean, it's just probably a natural part of the process, but theory doesn't sometimes work in practice, is what I'm finding. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, and
but
sorry, go on.
No, that's it really. So.
I think with marketing in general, it's huge amounts of experimentation, and I as everyone knows, I'm not a video I'm not a video production expert, but in my experience, you've got to experiment with this stuff, especially early on. Getting the episode formula and style and look and feel, planning will take us a long way, and it will really point us in the right direction. But at the end of the day, we've got to do what you guys have done this weekend, and just capture some footage and see how we fit, and if we need to adjust our plan, that's what we do. Okay, Maha, is there anything you want to update us on?
No, sorry. As I said last time as well, I wouldn't probably be able to make any videos because I think my theme was very different, and I would need like a proper backdrop as of now to like begin with the products, and just it wasn't something that I can solely rely on myself to like speak about. So no, I couldn't start anything. But Ali, just a small tip, just in case it helps you. It did help me if I was ever recording or if I was in public speaking. You said that you had a bit of problems in like memorizing the lines, or like just having. So I think that you, as a person making the videos, your content very, very well. So to make sure that it comes across that way, what I would do is that instead of like writing, instead of like memorizing the whole lines, maybe you could just make bullet points. And so you read the bullet point and be like, okay, this is talking about ingredients. And then naturally speak about ingredients the way you would when you're, for example, explaining it to Jordan or explaining it to us. And that way, I think it just creates a bit of like a natural, just candid kind of shot, as opposed to maybe, because if you're memorizing it and if you're trying to like look back and what exactly are the words, it kind of feels like it's very robotic. As opposed to so that was just something that helped me when I was in debates, and that was something that I was trained to do, that just make bullet points and then speak naturally, because you can then relate to the audience much better than if you're trying to memorize the lines. So
yeah, that's good. That's a good point. Must remember that. I think it's because I want to try and make sure I fit everything in, and when you write it, you've got it all there, but I don't trust myself to leave bits out. So I'll definitely do the bullet point idea.
Okay.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Maha. That is a really, I've said it before, but I've seen Maha in sort of a 25-person class format, and you're a strong speaker, Maha. So if you had formal speaking training. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I started in A levels, and then I've done like different forms of debate. So in actually the first debate that I was trained in, it was a parliamentary speaking, which is that you get a topic and you have to speak 8 minutes for that topic. And what my trainer used to do was that slap bang in the middle of those 8 minutes. So maybe, for example, after 4 minutes, he used to tell me to change the stance. So if I was talking for the topic, I was supposed to speak against the topic in the next 4 minutes, like right there and then. So it's like impromptu speaking, and yeah, it's quite nerve-wracking in the beginning, but it does help later on.
Yeah, politicians definitely need to have the power of looking at the place. Yeah.